The wind carried the scent of dust and wild sage across the open plains. As the sun began to sink behind the rolling hills of Montana, the small ranch house stood like a stubborn survivor, its wooden frame weathered by years of wind and storms, yet still proud against the dying light. Inside, the crackle of the fire broke the quiet, and in that warmth sat a man who had faced more loss than most could carry. His name was Luke Grayson, a cowboy who'd learned to speak softly but work hard, raising 5 young children on his own since his wife passed 3 years ago. Every night, Luke tucked his kids into bed, read them old stories from a worn Bible, and sat by the porch after dark, listening to the lonely whisper of the prairie. But tonight felt different. The sky was painted in gold and crimson, and even the horses seemed calmer, as if waiting for something or someone. That someone arrived in a dusty carriage just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Her name was Clara. Clara Winslow was a woman whose eyes told stories before her lips ever moved. She'd come from the East, Boston, she said after answering an ad for a school teacher in the small town nearby. Life had not been kind to her. There were scars beneath her grace, the kind that didn't show on the skin but lived deep in the heart. When she stepped off that carriage, holding only a leather satchel and a book, Luke noticed something rare, a quiet strength, like a storm that had already passed. The first time they spoke was under the porch, the same one where Luke's children sat wide-eyed every evening, listening to him tell tales of their mother. The kids had taken to Clara almost instantly. She read to them, taught them songs, and somehow filled the empty spaces in their hearts without even trying. But Luke kept his distance at first. He'd learned the hard way that love could be both a blessing and a wound. Days turned into weeks, and soon Clara became a part of the rhythm of their lives. She'd help mend torn clothes, teach the youngest how to read, and sometimes even join Luke by the corral, where the horses grazed lazily under the wide sky. Luke found himself smiling again, something he hadn't done in years. But beneath Clara's laughter, there was always something held back, something unspoken. One evening, as the sky turned amber and the children played in the dirt, Clara stood by the fence with a book in her hand, her gaze far away. Luke approached quietly, the sound of his boots crunching on the dry earth. "You look like you're miles away," he said softly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe I am." He leaned against the post beside her, arms crossed. "Boston, huh? Must have been a long way to run." Her grip on the book tightened. "You make it sound like I'm hiding." "Are you?" he asked, his tone gentle. Clara turned to face him then, her eyes glistening in the dying light. "I came here because I needed a place where the past couldn't find me." She took a breath, the kind that trembles before the truth. "I was married once, a long time ago. After the fever took him, the doctor told me I couldn't have children. It was like losing him all over again. Every family I worked for after that, they'd look at me different once they knew, like I was broken." The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment neither spoke. The sound of the wind filled the silence, sweeping across the open fields. Then Luke stepped closer, his voice steady and low. "Clara," he said, "you ever seen a man try to herd 5 kids on his own?" She blinked, caught off guard. "No, I can't say I have." He chuckled softly. "It's like trying to catch tumbleweeds in a storm. Every day's a mess, but I wouldn't trade it for nothing." Clara smiled faintly, lowering her eyes. "You're a good father, Luke." He paused, studying her face, then said something that made her breath catch. "You said you can't have children." Her eyes flickered with pain. "That's right." "Good," he said, a slow, warm smile spreading across his face. "I've got enough kids for both of us." For a moment, Clara just stared at him. Then the tension in her shoulders melted, and a tear escaped down her cheek before she could stop it. Luke reached up, gently brushing it away with his thumb. "You don't need to carry what you lost, Clara. You just need a place to belong." The sun dipped low, painting the world in a soft golden glow. Behind them, the children laughed and chased each other around the porch, their joy echoing across the open land. Clara looked at them, at this wild, beautiful family, and for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever: hope. That night after supper, she sat by the fire with the children gathered around. She read them stories until their eyes grew heavy and their heads rested on her lap. Luke watched from the corner, his heart full in a way he hadn't known since his wife's passing. When the fire burned low, Clara looked up and met his eyes. There were no words needed. In the weeks that followed, their bond grew stronger. Luke's children started calling her Miss Clara, but soon it just became Ma, the ranch that had once echoed with silence now brimmed with laughter, music, and the sounds of life again. And sometimes, when the stars came out and the wind whispered through the grass, Luke would wrap his arm around Clara's shoulders on that same porch where it all began. You know, he'd say, the good Lord doesn't always give us what we want, but he sure has a way of giving us what we need. Clara would rest her head against him, smiling through quiet tears. I think he gave me more than I ever asked for. The camera would fade out on that image. The family gathered under the wide Montana sky, a home full of laughter, love, and second chances.